Good morning, everybody. I just wanted to say a very quick hello, really. I think Andy is going to give us a perfectly good introduction to what we're going to do today. So just sit back, enjoy, and ask any questions when you need to. And just welcome to our first online session, and hopefully this will be really successful, and we'll want to repeat the experience later in your projects. Thanks.
Hello everybody, and welcome to today's webinar. Before I move on too quickly, can I just ask everyone to give me a green tick if you can hear me okay? It's Andy speaking at the moment. Just making sure that I'm not talking into thin air before we move any further. That's looking really good. Lots of green ticks starting to appear there, which means we can make a proper start. It's actually been a long time since our last meeting back in March. Hopefully your projects are progressing well, but if you do have any questions about the program more generally, then we should have time to cover those towards the end of this session. The focus of which is on evidencing change, which relates very strongly to your project case studies. I've worked with a lot of projects over the last 9.5 years, and it's astounding how so many of them often undersell what they've achieved, and hopefully the topic area that we're covering today should help you to avoid that. So we've been trialing a new approach to this, which we hope might be of more practical help to projects, which I'm going to talk you through over the next 20 minutes or so. We'll then highlight some examples of how the tool is currently being used, and also allow some time for you to question or comment on the approach itself. To begin with, I just wanted to reiterate the purpose of the program itself, which is twofold. Firstly, it's about co-development, very much a priority for the Open Innovation projects. So our aim here is for you to play a leading role in facilitating and generating innovation through the provision of online knowledge and information services and opportunities in partnership with local organizations and through online marketplaces. So again, just to reiterate there, that's very much a focus for the Open Innovation projects, although there could well be some overlap. The second is all about access, more of a focus for the Access to Resources projects, which seems pretty straightforward. The aim here is just to improve access to information and knowledge resources for external parties to the institution. A third one that might not seem so apparent, Jisc's mission is to provide world-class leadership in the innovative use of information and communications technology to support education, research and institutional effectiveness. So the catch here is that this work is not just about creating opportunities for institutions and solving problems for externals, but it's also about demonstrating the benefits of the innovative institutional supported use of web technologies. I've just seen a mention there from Will Video, if I'm feeling brave. I'll give everybody a quick wave. Hi everyone, but it's not a particularly fantastic view or anything, and I'm going to be sharing some screens, so I'd rather everybody focus on that for the time being. So other than saying hello for a quick moment, I'll turn that back off. I've also had a couple of problems in the past with my Mac where it's caused Blackboard Collaborate to shut down, but yeah, I'll turn that off for now. Just as a side note, if people do have any questions as I'm speaking, please feel free to interrupt. As Will mentioned earlier on, you can use the icons to put your hand up, or you can put things in the chat window prefixed with question. Will, if I happen to miss anything, please interrupt me and give me a shout and let me know that there's something there. Just moving on, the program, through sort of evidence gleaned from its portfolio of projects, aims to demonstrate the growing role further and higher education has in generating innovation opportunities and deriving greater value from them. We're also keen to highlight enhanced support resources and opportunities for institutions' own innovators as well. So very much point one on the slide there. The second point is about business growth. So in particular, enhanced access for SMEs, entrepreneurs, and other external parties to information and knowledge and innovation and collaboration opportunities that the institution might have. And then finally, the one that's pretty self-explanatory is the exploitation of knowledge. So those are very much the aims of the program, and they're available within the call. So hopefully none of these initial slides should be new to you at this stage. In terms of capturing evidence and delivering outputs from your projects, you are expected to carry out the following. There's demonstrator, there's the blog, there's the case study, there's the transferability assessment, demonstration of your demonstrator, so to speak, and also a completion report. And I'll just talk through each of those in a little bit more detail. So in terms of developing a demonstrator, that's essentially the main output from your project. As a part of what you do, and you will have developed something which can be demonstrated to others across the UK and perhaps wider. And there are a couple of examples highlighted on the screen there from past projects. So you've got Interface, Realize, and also Engage. The URL at the bottom of the slide, www.netvibes.com/JiscBCE, that houses all of the outputs from the first phase of Open Innovation Access to Resources. So you can access previous case studies, you can access previous demonstrators, sort of pilot outputs, and also gain access to sort of a video from each of the projects and the original blogs as well. Moving on to blogs, you are expected to make contributions to a blog, whether that was set up for your individual project or as part of a cluster. Now, the idea behind regularly blogging isn't that it promotes interest from across the sector. I'm not keen on the term blog. I think it's used a little bit too much, and I prefer to think of it more as news or a self-reflection of the work you've done to date for public interest. And information coming from your blogs is actually also aggregated within the NetVibes site as a central store of ongoing activity across the program. So almost like a one-stop shop for all of the activity that's ongoing. Just noticed there in the chat window, not really a question. Important for the institution to learn and evolve as the result of a redefinition of relationships, a two-way process. Chris, I think you're absolutely spot on there. And I think that's definitely worth bearing in mind throughout this process and throughout the project lifetime. Moving on to the third point on the screen there, the case study. This is an extremely important output as it will help to inform others from across the sector how you approach the project, what worked, what didn't, what the benefits of it were. And as we speak, the whole point of Jisc is to fund risk and to share lessons from its work to help others avoid the hidden pitfalls that they might come across. Projects are required to use the wiki for the case studies, which I'll quickly, hopefully, walk you through now. I'm about to share my screen with you all, so you should hopefully see a web page soon. Can I just ask everybody before I move on that everybody can see that on their screen? It should be showing sort of a Google Chrome web browser, and also it should be on the sort of home page for the support wiki. Seems to be quite a few green ticks coming through there.
Kind of.
I should mention
Andy,
at this point that...
Sorry, Andy, can I just... I've kind of got it, but I've got 2 blank spaces as well on my screen. Yeah, that's better.
Right, I think that's as I'm flicking between Blackboard and the web browser itself. Once I've finished speaking at the moment, I'll just move directly to the web browser, so hopefully those boxes should disappear and you should be able to follow where I'm going. I'm just on the main panel at the moment, so I can see who's got green ticks and also see if there's anything in the chat window appearing. But I should warn people, as I'm moving through this, it does come across slightly jittery on your screens. I'll try and go through this slowly, but if you are having problems, please let us know through the chat window or through using some of the icons. There is a faster and slower icon there. And Will, if you could give me a shout just to notify me, because I'm probably just not going to be able to see those as they appear.
No problem. We'll do it.
So I'll move to my web browser now. Hopefully those grey boxes and things should have disappeared. Will, can you just confirm that for me?
Yeah, that's fine. We can see the full browser window.
Brilliant. So once you've logged into the support wiki, you'll probably land on a sort of the home page, which you should be able to see highlighted in the sort of top navigation page. This just provides a kind of overview of the network itself. Most of the time, if you've already logged in, you've been using the wiki a while, you'll probably land on the workspaces page, which I'm hoping should be appearing on your screens now. And this just gives you an overview of all the different workspaces within the wiki network that you have access to. You can see here that I'm part of quite a few different workspaces just because of the involvement that I have across a range of Jisc programs. But when you enter the screen, you'll probably only see the OIA2R workspace and also the program support resources workspace. Will, again, can I just ask to confirm that this is sort of appearing okay on your screen, just to make sure I'm not going too fast?
Yep, it's coming through fine for me, and if anyone's having any problems, please do just put a mention in the chat window. So back to you, Andy.
Brilliant, thanks for that, Will. So if you click on the OIA2R workspace, then you should be taken to a page that provides you with an overview of the program itself. Towards the top of the page, you've got a very brief introduction just outlining the two aims that I mentioned earlier on of the program. You've also got some key links, so a link to the mailing list for this program, a link to the BCE team's blog, which provides information from across the whole of the Jisc BCE program, not just the Open Innovation Access to Resources one. And also just some information there about the hashtags that we're using if you happen to use Twitter to publicize any information your projects might be doing. Towards the center of the screen, we then have a sort of two columns which highlights the two clusters of projects that we've got. I'm just going to scroll down slightly, and this will probably make your screen jitter a little bit, but hopefully it should right itself quite soon. And I'll just give that a little bit of time. Hopefully that should have appeared on your screen now. Okay. So you've got the Open Innovation cluster on the left-hand side with information regarding the two critical friends, George and Nigel. And then on the right-hand side, you've got the Access to Resources cluster with information about the critical friends again, Chris Batt and John Dolan. Just below that, you've got a list of all the projects, and then a little bit further down, you've also got a list of key contacts. So within this page, there are details here that helps you to understand who you might contact if you are having any problems. The first point of call, and I'm aware that you've already been in touch with your critical friends, but your critical friends probably in the first instance, if there's sort of any administrative problems with regards to the wiki and that kind of thing, then it would probably be Caroline, Mark, or Will, or myself. I'm happy to help out where possible, but those three in the first instance. So what I'd like to do now is just demonstrate the sort of case study and how that all fits together. So to edit your case study, you need to click on your own project, and I'll use Encapsulate as an example here. Once you click that, you're taken to a folder view which contains all of the 4 sections of your case study. Now the idea is that throughout your project you begin to flesh all of this out. As it stands, only, or at the time when I wrote this, there's sort of only 5 out of 11 projects that had really made any progress on this so far. Encapsulate are one of those projects, so I've got some sort of examples to show you here. The summary hasn't been fleshed out too much, but they have added some interesting initial thoughts into the section on success and also the section on benefits. So I'll quickly just give you an overview of some of the work that they've done there. I'm not going to scroll down the page or anything, otherwise it'll make your screen go quite fuzzy and things. But you can just see here they've added a fair bit of content in here. They're starting to really think about what they're going to shape up within the case study, especially within the success section of the case study. And I'll just quickly click on the benefits section from the Navigate pane on the right-hand side. You don't always have to go into the folder view to navigate through the wiki. There is a useful little navigator on the right-hand side. So I'll just click on benefits. And here again, you can just start to see how they begin to flesh this page out. They've highlighted some overarching sort of benefits, sort of categories of benefits. So be more effective, saving money, have a positive impact on wider society, maintain research and excellence. So you can start to see how some of this is beginning to be shaped up. As you begin to fill in these sections of your case study, these are the information within these are automatically taken to populate a full view of your case study. So I'm just going to navigate through the wiki a little bit. So again, your page might come across a little jittery here, but if you can just bear with me, I'm just going to move through the navigator pane, back up the folder system, through the projects folder, and to the top level. And there's a folder there called Project Case Studies. I'm going to click on that. And in the navigator pane, I've got a full list of all of the case studies for the projects. If I click on University of Essex, we then get a full view of all those sections aggregated together. You don't have to do anything for that to happen. That just happens on the fly. We've set that up so that this automatically populates what you've written so far. I'm going to move down the page just so you can get a good view of what's actually happening there, but I'll pause at each sort of main stage. And all of these headings are within the case study section templates. It's just a case of you adding the relevant content there. So it really is as simple as editing 4 pages. The links are on the front page of the overview of the program within the wiki. At this point, does anybody have any questions about the wiki while I'm still sharing the screen? If there are any concerns or anything with the wiki at this point, I might be able to answer your questions while I'm still in here. I heard a ding, so I'm aware somebody has a question. Will, would you be able to provide the microphone?
It's actually me having is it a question or a point I want to make? I don't know. Probably more of a point. Just to say that I've set up an area in the wiki for our online sessions. So there's some stuff about best practice with Blackboard Collaborate. So if you want to kind of brush up on some of the tips there's more guidance in the wiki, and he's just navigating to it now. We'll also put, as I replied to Maurice earlier, we'll also put a link to the recording of all of our online sessions and the presentation slides from the online sessions and associated materials in the wiki area. So it really is your go-to area. So there we go. Andy's in just navigating through at the moment. You go into the important information page. Coming up. There we go. So we'll also put the program of online sessions in there. There's a mention that we'll have another one in September and one after in October. Stuff about joining instructions. If you ever forget the participant link, it's pasted in here, and also the link for checking your Java settings and so on. So just to reiterate that it's our go-to area. Right, I'm going to put my hand down, and then Chris, if you want to turn on your microphone to ask a question.
It's probably just making a point for later. It does seem to me that we probably need to talk a bit about how the use of the wiki relates to other knowledge management activities that go on with projects, because I know that my 3 have got blogs and websites and things going on elsewhere. And I mean, just as a simple point, that's not flagged up in the wiki at the moment. In fact, some are using them better than others. But I think we probably need to talk about whether it needs any refinement or whether we just need to make sure that there is a read across between other websites and internal knowledge management systems that are being used with the wiki.
I think that's a really good point, Chris, and we can definitely flesh out the overview page, I think, to make sure that there's clear cross linkages between all of the websites and things that are being used across this part of the BCE program. But more specifically, I think if you could just think of the wiki as an area for developing your individual case study, and also as Will mentioned, for any sort of central resources delivered by the project team, the project support team. That's probably the easiest way to think about it. I think it's fine for projects to kind of be using other things, but we definitely want the case study to be shaped up within this environment. Does that? Sorry again, I'm sort of flying blind because I've just got the wiki in front of me here, but I hope that kind of makes some sense. Were there any other questions or points? Sorry.
I mean, really, just want to say that I understand that completely. It's just that I think for the projects, it's maybe something that needs to be flagged up for any future projects. Perhaps a bit more of a map about how they should relate to the various activities, because one of my projects has got a lot of different players and they've set up their own Basecamp system and they're working through that. And it's, in one sense, I suppose it's projects remembering that there's a role for the wiki when they're feverishly beavering away doing their own systems. So it's just maybe something for the future.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that we're trying not to do is to place too many things there for the projects to have to think about. And I know some people can find the wiki and those sorts of things an extra burden on top of what they already might be doing. But from a Jisc perspective, we do have a responsibility to aggregate all of the information across the work that's being done and present that as an output at the end of the program. So it's a difficult one, but I definitely take that point, and perhaps something that we can flesh out more at the start of future programs.
I think you're free to carry on, Andy.
Thanks for I'll just close the wiki down now and move back to the presentation. So hopefully everybody's screen should go back to the presentation now. If you could all give me a green tick just to make sure that that's the case. Yeah, that's looking pretty good. John, did you want to come in there?
I just put a question about the wiki on the chat panel. I wonder if you just have a look at that. I put two things on it. The first one I'm interested in, which is about where critical friends might put stuff that they observe is common to more than one project, challenges, trends, common experiences, so that they can develop some exchange between projects about common experiences.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry, I'm just trying to read the question as well. I think you're right. I think unfortunately there is going to be some duplication because of the work that a project has to do within their own institution. We are trying to make this as easy as possible, and I think the 4 sections within the case study aren't a major hindrance. The blog in itself, I mean, essentially that's just a project website, which most projects will be doing anyway. The benefit of having it as a blog is that you can provide more useful regular updates. In the past, we, from a Jisc perspective, tended to find that projects put up a website, put very basic information there, but then do little all else with it. So that's kind of the focus for the blog. But I do take the point that there is going to be some duplication, and we are trying our best to reduce that as much as we can. And certainly going forward, we'll try to do that even more where possible.
Okay, well that's helpful. I recognise that. My other point was just, is there a place where critical friends can write about trends that they spot across more than one project? I mean, I'm more than once now referred one of my 3 projects to another because I see them having common issues or problems or challenges or experiences that the other would benefit from. Is there something you can write about that to draw attention? I mean, it may extend to further projects, a trend that's maybe of interest to others.
I think that's a really good point. I hadn't included anything in this about that, but off the top of my head, I'd have to maybe check with Will and Caroline, but I'm thinking if people are happy for it to go more public, then I think we'd be definitely more happy for critical friends to write something on the main BCE blog. If it's something that projects and the critical friends aren't happy to go more public, then it's quite easy to set up a page within the wiki if you want to have a discussion in there. We can certainly set up a space there. Will, did you want to come in there?
Yeah, you kind of made the point that I was going to make, that it depends who they're writing for. So if critical friends are writing primarily for the benefit of projects, gathering together trends across projects in a kind of semi-private environment, then the wiki is exactly the place to do it. But as some of our critical friends have already done, they're writing more for public engagement or for the wider BCE community, then that content would go onto the BCE blog.
Yeah, get an agreement there from Caroline as well through the chat window. And I've also provided the link to our blog there just in case anybody's unaware of that, but that's also listed within the overview of the program within the wiki. So yeah, I think we're okay to move on now. I just wanted to highlight a couple of other things that are mentioned in the call that projects are expected to sort of deliver, and also I think the ways of collecting further evidence, but projects are expected to carry out a transferability assessment. So looking outside of the project, there's other organizations that might be interested in what you're doing. And I know the critical friends have been very helpful in this respect in helping some of the projects think that through. I think Simon mentioned that there has been a partnership identified with a local library at one of the projects. Will, did you want to come in there?
Yeah, I've just spotted that we missed a question from Tom about where are the templates on the wiki, if there are some. And just to make the other point that, as you can see, that we're starting to use the raise hand thing to ask questions with audio. So please feel free to just tap the raise hand if you want to pitch in at anybody. Otherwise, I think we should move on soon to the evidencing change stuff. Andy?
Yeah, just to answer that question, Tom, the templates in themselves have sort of already been set up for you, so the pages themselves are there. When you click on the link for your project from the overview page within the wiki, that takes you to the pages that you need to fill in. So hopefully that makes sense. I don't know if you could give me a green tick or just mention that in the chat window. The headers themselves are within the page. Sorry, I'll just share the screen back with everyone just to quickly go back to the template. If you can just bear with me, this might seem very jittery on yours, but I'm just going to quickly navigate back to one of the templates. Just going to click on a random one here. You can actually see here that Loughborough has started to collect a couple of extra files in here. So they've got a couple of PowerPoints, and they've also made their own page. So as well as the main pages that you need to fill in, feel free to make your own pages and your own notes within the wiki. Use it however you feel. But the main pages for your project are the benefits, the success, the summary, and the transferability sections. If I just click in summary, for example, the page is already set up with a range of headers which you need to fill in, and there should be some guidance notes within there if you haven't deleted those. So you can sort of see at the top of here, there's a delete as appropriate. So I would expect every project to kind of delete either open innovation or access to resources, depending on which cluster they're from. There's the project title, and I think initially when you first go into a template page, the title isn't there. It's just sort of an XXX, delete as appropriate, and fill in your proper name. And then there's spaces to fill in under each of the headers. So I think the original headers are what the project delivered, about the project, and technology used. Those would be the headers within the summary section. And each of the other sections have their own headers already within there. So I'm hoping that, again, answers your question. Getting a green tick there. Cheers, Tom. If I haven't made sense or anything, then I can certainly help answer any questions offline or anything. I just mentioned the transferability assessment that every project expected to carry out, but the idea is then that you actually demonstrate your main output to a suitable transferability partner or group. And then finally, a completion report will be required at the end of the project, which will provide sort of formal closure on behalf of Jisc and your institution. So those 6 areas there are the main sort of deliverables of your project, but hopefully the main sort of mechanisms for capturing evidence. An area most of our projects have difficulty with is outlining what benefits the project has achieved. When we receive case studies, we often hear phrases like "our project aimed to," expected benefits are, and so on. We're well aware that benefits realization often takes place post-project, but each of you within your project plan outlined a specific problem area you were trying to resolve or improve. And by the time your project ends, you must have delivered some benefit or impact. There must be some change that's occurred within your project. So we'll be looking for sort of phrases like, this is a very convoluted example, but hopefully it'll make some sense. We're looking for things like, at the start of this project, we had no way of sharing resources with external partners. We now have processes in place to support this. We have clarified with IT services a preferred access management approach. The website has been amended to provide clearer details about this. And so far we have had 8 SMEs, 1 entrepreneur, and 1 charity access information relating to their business. 1 SME outlined how the information provided helped them to redefine a process within their organization, resulting in a 50% cost saving. Now, I know that's a very strung together example, but it's reflective of the kind of language we want to hear from you. But as well as that, we'd also expect to see a quote from the SME. We'd expect a screenshot of the website before and after the changes were made, an overview of the processes agreed with your institution, and so on. So real evidence, exactly, the sort of the mention there within the chat window from George. To help you sort of achieve this, we've developed a template that might help you think this through. But before we delve into that, I just wanted to see if we can quickly carry out a quick brainstorming exercise. And this could be where it gets a little bit messy, but hopefully everything should work well. I've set up a Google Doc with the matrix, which is on your screen there within it. And I'm hoping that we might be able to spend 5 minutes just trying to brainstorm what type of benefits might appear in each of the quadrants. So across the top, you can see there that there's the sort of innovation, business growth, and knowledge exploitation. And those were the three sort of key aims of the program. Down the left-hand side, we've got three broad sort of categories of benefits. So efficiency, effectiveness, and enablement. And I've tried to give some brief explanation of what those are. But to be honest, feel free to interpret those however you want. It's just a case of quickly brainstorming what benefits your project might deliver within each of the quadrants. I'm going to share a link within the chat window. If I can get the right one. If you click on that link, it should take you to a web browser. With the matrix in. Could people give me a sort of green tick if they've got to that page? You might have to come back into the Collaborate window. I'm getting a few green ticks coming through. Lots of green ticks starting to come through now. What I'd like people to do is just spend 5 minutes outlining a couple of benefits that you might expect to see in each of those quadrants. I'll set the timer, and once that's run down, I'll bring everybody back into the main room within Collaborate. Michael, did you want to ask a question then?
Yeah, Andy.
I'm still online, so if anybody does want to ask questions and that kind of thing, then feel free to.
Yeah, hi Andy, can you hear me?
Yeah, coming through loud and clear, yeah.
No, I asked a question in the chat. Just would it be possible for you to give a bit more information on what you mean by the headings across the top?
Yeah, so those were the three sort of broad aims of the program itself. So in terms of innovation, it's sort of generating opportunities and deriving greater value from them with external partners, but also keen to highlight where possible, enhance support, resources and opportunities for institutions' own innovators. The second point about business growth was more around sort of enhanced access for SMEs. Business growth might not necessarily be the right term, but as I mentioned before, feel free to interpret some of these however you want. But enhanced access for SMEs, entrepreneurs, and other external parties to the information and knowledge that you might have within the institution. Also looking at the sort of innovation and collaboration opportunities within the institution as well, so access to those kinds of things. And finally, knowledge exploitation. I kind of think that one's self-explanatory. It's about it probably is actually overlaps with the first two. It's about actually something actually happening after an external partner has gained access to the. Sorry, I'm just keeping an eye on the chat window as well. Whether an external partner has sort of gained access to an information or opportunities within the institution. I hope that makes some kind of sense. This is just a very quick sort of exercise just to see what kind of comes of it. We might need to think more carefully about what the headings going across the top actually are. And we might get more input from yourselves as you start to work through some of this stuff. I know we had some feedback from I think it was actually Chris. Yeah, Chris suggested to Nottingham, who've been sort of having a brief look at some of this stuff. They were very keen to make a start on some of this, so they got an early version of the template that I'm going to talk about soon. But Chris mentioned in some of the feedback that the headings might also be more reflected as sort of benefit to a region, or the technical benefit derived, or transferability benefit. Just heard yeah, Chris, do you want to come in there?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to stop what people are doing. I haven't actually added anything yet to own up for my own kind of sitting here and thinking. I mean, I think there are a whole bunch of issues about this kind of activity, and that if you're not very careful, everybody interprets what it says in different ways. The point I would suggest to start with is that there are dependencies within this, because in a sense a benefit is not innovation itself, but the innovation makes it possible to generate business growth, but it also might change the way, for example, the university behaves and things like that. And one can, well, as people are doing, putting things in. But when we were doing this at Nottingham, it was quite clear that there were, if you like, a hierarchy that needs to be drawn out of it. And I'm not making this very clear because we didn't get copies of what we talked about. I mean, I've seen their short notes, but I think that this document could be very important, but it does need to be made very explicit in what your expectations are, and probably talk to people about it, because otherwise we could easily get different things in the same boxes. I mean, the point I made, well, one of the points I made there was this question of the broader, if you like, halo effect of doing these sorts of things, which is what one sees at the moment in a lot of projects. And I'm not sure whether that's real evidence, but it may be exactly what the university thinks it should be doing. So, I mean, that's a bit of a ramble, but I think the document has got to be very clear about the expectations and how the bits fit together. Oh, time is up, sorry.
No, I think that's really useful, and I think the project support team and even the projects themselves, actually, we can all sort of reflect on what you've just said there. And to me, this is, we're trying to make this as practical as possible, and this is a bit of, we've only used this with a few projects. We're just trying to get them to flesh out the kinds of examples and things that we want at the end of the program. But I think it's a starting point, and we need to think more clearly about how we go about this. And it could be that one of the future webinars we reflect on what's been said here, what's been added to the documents, how you found the templates and that sort of thing, and refine what we've got. But I think that's really useful commentary. Thanks.
Can I just come back on that and just say that I agree with you?
Yeah.
That absolutely. I'm certainly not. I think having this kind of document is crucial, but it does need to be tested as you're doing, and then it does need to be reflected on and refined, because there are too many forms to get filled in that don't really tell us anything useful, and this could be a really important way to move forward.
Brilliant, thank you. Getting a comment there from Michael using Google Docs is quite frustrating. Yeah, it can be at times. It was just a quick test, and tried to do something a little bit more interactive for the session rather than sitting listening to me all day. But I mean, we do have a few sort of examples being added there. You can see yourselves within the browser, within some of the quadrants. We've got things like make a useful contribution to a collaborative innovation project in 5 minutes, requires ability to gain a rapid overview of current state, efficient way of HEIs and others to advertise services, multi-sector innovation projects carried through to implementation. And this matrix is very much a brainstorm. So this is just to give you a sort of idea of some of the things that perhaps other people across the OIA to our program might be thinking about, and it might give you further ideas. But as mentioned, this is just a brainstorming exercise. So if I can bring everybody sort of back into the main room, if you could give me a green tick once you're back in there. Lots of green ticks starting to appear there. I'll move on to highlight some of the expected benefits that we expected to see from a program perspective. These items on the main screen were written as part of the call. So that these are areas that we sort of expected benefits to perhaps come to fruition within and across your projects. So we've got the sort of support for interaction, and by that we're meaning with external parties, including the processes, rewards and incentives for external engagement activities within your institution. We've got proven ability to engage effectively with specific external parties, such as small and medium enterprises where relevant. Management flexibility, that's in support of BC, so including an ability to operate in two modes. There's often undertaking sort of standard practiced external engagement activities, but there's also an area around selectively pursuing new innovative opportunities that arise. And we hope that through some of these projects that can happen. Partnership management skills and functions, so specific skills dedicated to empowering individuals for developing and managing strategic relationships and alliances as well. So some of the skills with regards to that could be boundary spanning, facilitation skills, negotiation skills. Hopefully some of these things should be arising across your project. We've got support for a value creation, so processes which enable consistent management and use of knowledge and expertise assets across functions and departments. And then finally we've got there one which is often relevant to a whole host of sort of BCE program areas, but trust and information sharing. So effective information and knowledge exchange across faculties and departments, and also between academic departments and business functions, and especially sort of enterprise, IT and marketing. And that sort of leads us nicely into the template which I've sort of been mentioning throughout this session, which is actually a very simple table covering the types of questions we'd like you to ask yourselves in relation to the benefits and impacts of your projects. And I'll quickly just share my screen with you all again so that we're all looking at the same thing. And you've got a better view of that rather than it being on the slide itself. So hopefully you can all see an Excel spreadsheet here. If I could, I'm just going to go back into Blackboard Collaborate, so you might see some grey shading across the screen, but I'm just checking everyone can see that. If you can give me a green tick that you can. Great, again, lots of green ticks, so I'll jump back to that. So hopefully the grey shading should disappear. But this is the template that we're hoping to use. I'm often asked to define what I mean by benefits and impact, and after doing some research, I came to the conclusion that it's not really worth getting that hung up about for what we're after here. What we're really doing is evidencing change, and I think that's the sort of interpretation that we've come to across the team, the support team. As a result of your project, X has changed to Y. We now have a website. We've saved a local business from winding down. Those sorts of things. It's all about evidencing change. The matrix exercise that we just carried out provided us with a starting point for column D. So if you can see that, I know that the text's quite small, but I want to make sure you can see the full table. Column D highlights expected benefits. What do you anticipate these indicators will be at the end? The brainstorming activity that we've just carried out should feed directly into this column. We should be able to lift some of those examples and put them into column D.
Andy,
yes,
it's Will.
Just heard a question thing there. I'm going to go back to the room.
Yeah, Andy, it's Will. I think it'd be useful actually if you zoomed in a bit in your Excel application, just so we can see the headings more clearly.
Okay, yeah, will do. Is that coming across better for everyone? Or would you?
Yeah, that's good.
Bill, can you just confirm whether I need to zoom in a little bit more?
That's good for me,
right.
So let's carry on.
Yeah, so...
interestingly, everyone's watching you click through menus and so on, thinking, I know which one to press. George has given you a control and scroll tip for future. So yeah, back to you.
No worries. Yeah, the new Excel. I was a bit confused actually by the windows, because I've got the main window highlighted by a sort of yellow box, and I'm using a Mac, but the main file menu is outside that box. So it was, yeah, from my perspective, it was very confusing, but hopefully everyone can see that now. But I was just sort of mentioning that the brainstorming activity that we've just done is just about getting a feel for what the kind of expected benefits are of your project, and hopefully you could lift those and just slot them straight into column D. But it's then a case of thinking through what the current problem is and what part of your project will influence sort of positive change in this area. And that's covered by column A. And the reason I'm sort of jumping from column to column is firstly to make the point that this definitely isn't a linear thing. Don't think of this as in you have to work from column A all the way through to the last stages of the spreadsheet. You can hop about throughout this table, however, in whichever way suits you best. From our perspective, and after trying this a couple of times, we did find that it was a lot easier to start with the expected benefits, because you've already kind of highlighted those within your project plan, and we've just kind of done a little brainstorming exercise within Google Docs there, which might give you some ideas of things that could be added there. But we then feel once you've got those benefits, it's then you can start to think about, well, what's the current problem, what's the current situation, and what parts of our project are going to start to change that. Column B, I think, should be pretty straightforward in terms of who will be affected by the changes. There are often people who you don't necessarily think about in the first instance that might crop up at a later stage. So it's quite useful just to quickly jot down the key stakeholders for a particular benefit within the table here, reflected by column B. Column C is the one that might really get you thinking. What indicators will provide evidence that change has occurred? Now, we're very interested in both qualitative and quantitative indicators here. It could be a quote from one of your users before and after the project, particularly interested in before and after. It could be percentage FTE spent on something, or it could be costs, or anything else that you might be able to think of that could highlight a change throughout your project. But ideally, we would like evidence, a before and after picture to indicate that change has occurred. Column E then provides you with an opportunity to highlight what the current state of play within your institution is. So considering this sort of what the current issue problems are from column A, what indicators you think might be able to help you evidence change, actually noting those down within column E. So it could be that you spend 80% FTE on a particular process. That could be the baseline current state information. Is everybody kind of following me so far? It is quite a simple table, but when you're actually filling it in, it's a little bit more difficult. But I'm hoping this is making sense to everyone at the moment. I'm not hearing any pings for questions or anything like that. I'm aware there might be things going on in the chat. Question, yeah.
Bill coming in here. Question that Chris has just asked: what's the difference between column A and column E? I can answer it, Andy, but you might want to carry on.
I think, yeah, I was just reading what was written in the two columns. I think the difference is that column A is very much focused on what the problem is, so an explanation of the problem. Doesn't have to be an explanation; it could just be a couple of words or whatever. But column E is actually almost a measurement or an actual quote that you've got. Bearing in mind the indicators that you've sort of thought through in terms of what might be able to evidence the change. So in column A, the problem could be too much time spent on a certain process. In column C, you could identify that you would like to capture quotes from staff. You'd be looking at the percentage FTE spent on the process. The baseline column E, would then actually give what the current state is, so the actual percentage FTE spent on that process at the time, at the beginning of the project. And it would also possibly then have a quote from that member of staff who's carrying that out. I know I'm using percentage FTE as a very basic example, but thinking that through a little bit more, I think the kind of expected benefit relating to that would be more about building further capacity to do other things. In which case the problem is there's too much time currently spent on a certain process that you might want to improve to release a staff's time to work on other things. Hopefully that makes some sense. Yeah, I think there was another question there.
Andy, it's Will coming in here again. Simon's made a comment about a refined version of the 3Es matrix, but I want to just reiterate that that's how this evidencing change template is actually essentially a refined version of the 3Es matrix in some ways, but we certainly do think that the 3Es matrix is useful, so we can circulate that separately. But the other question was from George, stating, what does each row represent?
I think it depends how you want to fill this in. The way that I've mentioned, I would tend to list benefits in the first instance, and you might then get an overlap of problem areas and issues that you're facing. But you can put as much detail as you want within each of the rows. I think one of the some feedback that we got from Nottingham is that in the first instance they felt like, yeah, there's sort of 30 rows there, so they're expected to fill this in, but that's not necessarily the case. It could just be that you have maybe 3 to 5 rows filled in here. It's not a case that you have to fill out sort of 30 rows of information. But it's kind of, depending on how you want to work it, I could see each row being there to provide evidence of each kind of benefit expected from the project, or you might work the other way around in terms of listing the problems that are currently there, thinking through what your project's expected to achieve, and work it that way around. Hope that makes some kind of sense. Yeah, another question here in the pings.
It's me again. Sorry about this. Looking at the form, this may be one of the reasons I'm asking rather than writing it down is it may be just a very silly question, but columns A to E, wouldn't they be a requirement of project proposals? Or is that what you're expecting? Because they seem to me the ideal things you'd ask people to do before you actually decided whether to give them any money to do it. And then you've got a baseline nailed in terms of the money to actually then look back afterwards at the later stages and see whether they did it or not.
Can I just ask who that was from? I've got a feeling, was that John? Or?
No, well, if I sound like John, apologies to John, it's Chris.
Chris, oh, sorry, yeah. Chris, you're absolutely right. But the problem that we have is that we don't know who's received that information as well as what we would have liked within the proposals. However, from a Jisc perspective, we do believe those proposals are good ideas, and therefore we do feel as if they're very worthwhile funding. But the problem that we have at Jisc is that baseline and real evidence of what the current problem, what the current baseline situation is, just it doesn't come through within the proposals. That's a very personal perspective from me, but I'm happy for any of the members of the team to come in and provide their own perspectives on that.
Can I just say one thing quickly? Because I thought the process that you used this time about doing it the light touch to start with, I thought that would come out in terms of At the first stage will just get the good ideas, but then presenting this kind of requirement at the second stage will be exactly what was needed to allow a panel to make some judgments about whether the project's really worth doing and worth the money. That's just a quick comment.
No, again, I think you're absolutely right, and it's something that we've had a couple of internal meetings and things, and these are definitely things that are being sort of mooted for moving forward. I've noticed. Sorry, you might see some grey screens appearing over the spreadsheet because I've come back to Collaborate for now. But I've noticed, George, do you have a question as well?
Yes. Hi, Andy. It sort of overlaps with Chris's question, but or comment. I mean, is each row an item of evidence or an issue? And if you fill in any column in a row, and all the other columns, you know, is it necessary to fill them in, and are they related, and in what way are they related to the other columns? You know, what is it that ties each column together? Is it an issue or an item of evidence, or you know, evidence of what? It's just a wee bit confusing, I think.
And as I've sort of already mentioned, I think the best way to approach this is to list benefits first and then work through the other columns. And there is a relationship in terms of a row, that the things that you put within a row are connected to everything else, kind of thing. I'll highlight, it might be worth holding thoughts on that for the moment, because I'll highlight an example that we've got from Nottingham towards the end of this session. I'm wary that we're running quite close to 12:30 now, and we haven't finished the presentation yet, but I've got an example that might hopefully make some of that a little bit clearer. If you're okay for me to hold off for now.
Yeah, Andy, I think it'd be good to move on to an example. Do you want to load that up whilst I hand over to Simon to ask his question or make his point?
I'll hang fire before moving on, because there's just a little bit more of the spreadsheet to cover, but yeah. Simon, if you wanted to ask away.
Don't worry, just move on. We're running out of time. I'll make that point in another forum. It was in response to Chris and that debate there, so carry on. Cool.
So the column, sorry, I'll jump back to the spreadsheet. Those first set of columns are areas that you might well be able to focus on early on in your stages. And I think there was a mention in the chat window there, can this table be adapted? I think definitely. Talk to us about it. We'll see how we can shape this up. But the idea is, I think the ultimate idea of this session and of the template itself is just to get projects thinking more clearly about what the expected benefits are, what the expected changes are going to be within their institution. So hopefully, if anything else, it will have inspired people to think this through more carefully. It doesn't necessarily matter what order the columns are in, what you put in rows and that kind of thing. I think the idea is definitely to inspire a change in thought about this kind of thing. But the columns towards the end of the table are more about evidence and what change has actually occurred, pretty straightforward. So we mentioned before, column A, the baseline current state. You'd put some real information in there about what the current situation is. And the actual change column, column F, you'd highlight what those changes are towards at the end of your project. So initially you might have a certain percentage FTE at the end that might have been reduced by 20% or something like that. You might have had a quote in column E originally, followed up by a quote at the end of the project to highlight how things have changed within column F. So that kind of thing. There's also a column there to highlight whether or not any Jisc resources have helped to achieve the benefits that you're highlighting within this. But I must admit that column is more appropriate to another Jisc program, but I think it's worth leaving in there just in case. And the final column begins to get you to think about a narrative around what you've filled in across the row itself. And that is pretty much it. I'm just going to quickly close this window down and go back to the presentation before sharing an example that Nottingham did. Another, although it's not a requirement of your projects, the final stage of our approach across other program areas that we're working with is to ask them to take the narrative from that template and develop a digital story, whether that's audio-based, audio with still images, or a video. A number of projects find this useful in terms of promoting the project afterwards, so a very useful artifact for their own purposes as well as for Jisc. But as mentioned, this isn't a requirement of your projects, just something to think about perhaps. And if you are interested, then please let us know, because we can support you in that. But for now, I'll share an example that was provided to us from Nottingham. And this used an early version of the template that I've been talking you through. So some of the column headers are in slightly different orders, but that's actually that's been changed based on some of the feedback that we've had from Sandra. So hopefully you can see some of the types of things that Sandra's fleshed out based on her project at the University of Nottingham, and might make some of this make a little bit more sense. But if anybody has any questions at this point, then again, please feel free to ask away. Sorry, I'm flying blind a little bit here, so everyone can still see the example on your screen. But if there are any questions appearing in the chat window, please let me know.
John's just put his hand up. Go for it, John.
I was just wondering if in this or the earlier table we'd be looking at identifying areas that are transferable or replicable, or inform the sustainability of the project beyond the project period.
That's a really good point, John. My first thoughts would be that could be added to expected benefits column, because I think it is an aim of the program more generally to ensure that the outputs of individual projects are transferred hopefully to another partner organisation. So it could perhaps be fleshed out within the benefits section, if that makes sense.
I think given it's an important part of the criteria for the whole thing, it would be worth, it might be a third area, last gasp expectations or whatever. You know, something to, I mean, it's clearly part of what we're trying to achieve, but whether it appears at this stage or in this process is another matter. But it needs to be, you know, we've said all along that's something we want to know happens.
Definitely. I think comments from Sandra and in the first instance, sort of, she mentioned one of the difficulties that she had was that she was struggling because there were no sort of broad categories of benefits, and I think transferability could be a sort of category of the types of benefits that we're hoping to achieve through some of this stuff. I mentioned the sort of aims of the program in terms of innovation, business growth, knowledge exploitation that we covered in the sort of matrix exercise. But other things might include sort of economic benefit to the local region, technical benefit. I mentioned one of the extra aims from Jisc is that we are looking at the innovative use of web technologies here, and I think Simon reiterated that within the chat window as well. And as you said there, John, definitely the sort of transferability side of things. Sorry, I had a ping there. Oh, sorry, yeah.
Just the last point. Mike's there. One of the very early lessons that Mike discovered was that some of the SMEs he was talking to said, we are knowledge providers too. And so any evidence of the way the project has lifted the experience and growth, if you like, or benefits for the sector, not the HE sector, but the sector that you're working with out there, would be very valuable in the way it's given them confidence as knowledge providers. That was a salutary comment from early on in the Manchester project.
Brilliant, yeah. Was there another question there, Will? Or, sorry, I'm gonna. Hopefully, everyone's had a chance just to have a look through that example. But I'll come back to Blackboard Collaborate now, so I'll shut that screen down. After the webinar, we'll make all of these resources available to everyone. So there'll be a full sort of list of things that we've shown today.
Andy, it's Will. I'm just going to come in here for a moment because I'm conscious of the time. I think we should potentially run over by 5 minutes if that's okay with everyone, but if people need to head off, then please do let us know through the chat panel. I'm conscious that we've heard a lot from Critical Friends and from the sponsors of this team, but not a great deal from projects. So if any of the projects want to make a comment about the evidencing change template, or how they're feeling having seen some of this stuff, then please do let us know, or put your hand up. It'd be great to hear from you. Otherwise, back to you, Andy. And I suggest that we finish off at the end by giving Simon a minute or two just to make a couple of final remarks. So back to you, Andy.
I'm actually pretty much done. People are probably bored of my voice now, but yeah, that's pretty much all I had to say, really. And just to reiterate the point, though, that we are willing to work with projects on this, where we want to reflect on the process that we're outlining here and refine it over time. So any feedback that you have, any ideas, then just please let us know. Caroline, did you want to come in?
Yeah, thanks, Andy. Sorry, I just noticed there was a question from John, only a couple of lines up on the chat panel about an area to demonstrate what's intended to be transferable. John, I'm assuming I am assuming that you mean that for each project, and yeah, there's a wiki page for each project. One of the 4 pages that each project has is a transferability page, so that's really where we would expect projects to put in what they think, and to talk about what they think is transferable, or it will be possible for other people to use. That was it.
Thanks, Caroline, for answering that. So I think if we can just move on, if any of the projects or anybody has any further questions, please let us know. Otherwise, Simon, did you want to come in and say a few words just to summarize, add any thoughts, ideas that you've had throughout the talk?
Sure, thanks, Andy. Yeah, not that much to add, really. Just to say that I think hopefully projects are feeling that they do have a good range of support and guidance here to help them with their work, and a number of different ways of being guided from Critical Friends through to these specific ways of capturing the case studies as they evolve, which I think is a very dynamic way to do it and a helpful way to do it. It's been proved to be successful in other projects we've used, other programs we've used. Everything's there that you need. I think it's probably just familiarization with these different channels. The NetVibes site is a very useful way of viewing aggregated feeds from the various different projects. So personally, I found that very, very useful to refer to get an overall view of the latest logs, etc. So keep an eye on that. Just a quick word about transferability, which Andy and others have mentioned. That is something that probably in some of the project plans didn't really feature until, or isn't projected, isn't sort of planned to feature until much later in 2013, but I advise that you start thinking about that earlier. And in fact, John just mentioned it in his comment, and Caroline reiterated that on the wiki there is a place to put all that evolving information. So it's really about identifying other areas or other institutions that are facing the same sorts of challenges that may you know, end up being partners in that transferability process. We originally suggested that should be sort of looked at initially in October, so something to start thinking about in the autumn there, well, if not now really. So I wanted to highlight that. In terms of evidencing change, yes, this template really captures what we're trying to focus on across these projects and across all our programs nowadays in Jisc. Andy and Caroline, everybody in the synthesis team will need to be able to aggregate, analyze and synthesize across all your projects the key benefits delivered. So there is obviously a need for this information to be gathered in a consistent way, because at the end of the day we'll have a compendium of good practice from the various projects. So there's a purpose to all of this, and this will help us in that process of gathering together good practice from your projects. And just to also recognize that these are fairly experimental projects to some degree. I mean, they're not, perhaps experimental is the wrong word, perhaps we should say more groundbreaking projects. They are quite ambitious. They are, some of them are more on the margins of what institutions are typically putting their resources into at the moment. So you know, some of those benefits will take a while to sort of eke out, and I think we recognise that. But the demo will hopefully, obviously, provide that business case for this at the end of the day, and your ongoing blogs and case studies will do so as well. But we do recognise that nature of these projects. I think that's probably about it from me, just to say thanks to everybody really, particularly Andy and Will there for leading the facilitation. And I'm sure that everybody will continue to engage and have further questions offline, but thanks very much everybody. That's all from me for now.
Okay, thanks Simon. Will here, just coming in to wrap up the session. Thanks everyone for all of your contributions. I hope that's been a really useful session. I've just changed the polling type actually to ABC, and I've just put into the chat window what those A, B and C mean, and I just want you to reflect on Collaborate. I'm aware that there were quite a lot of new users here today, so if you could, as a way of wrapping up the session, just give me a vote about your experience of Collaborate today and how you feel about it after the session. A, great; B, undecided; C, not sure, nasty stuff, just to give us a heads up for the future. And I see most people have filled that in, so thank you very much. We can already see that there's lots of A's, a couple of B's, and if I find the right option, there we go, publish the results to the screen. Great, it's great to hear that people mostly find these online sessions or the environment to collaborate useful. So it just leaves me to say thank you very much, to wish everyone very well. If you don't know already, there's been some good news from the Olympics today from a Team GB perspective during the session. We will write up the session and circulate information afterwards. As I've put into the chat, there's a newsletter due soon. I'll try and review the session, try and clarify some of the stuff about deadlines potentially, and a bit of clarification also about different communication channels. But otherwise, thanks very much everyone. I'm about to stop the recording. Do feel free to use the chat or continue discussions if you want to, but otherwise that's the end of the session. Thanks very much.